further delay, let's just get started. So as we were talking about benchmarking is nothing but arriving at a certain standards, like how do you consider that a project is a success? What are the factors that you would consider? And it's basically arriving at a particular standard based on your historical information and the experiences that you had prior to running this project. So as an example, we can say that, for example, I got a new banking project and I need to develop, an online banking application. So benchmarking is nothing but looking at all the other online banking applications that you might have developed within the company and trying to see what are the statistics, probably if there are any lessons learned, or probably if there are any, if you can say that there might be 10% of the bugs still remaining at the end, because all this analysis is done by based on the past historical data that you collect about that project, and also based on people's experiences. So benchmarking is nothing but creating your standards by extensive brainstorming and also using the external, all the historical data. Okay, this is a very simple word, just wanted to let you all know. The important or interesting topic today is HP Application Lifecycle Management. It is also called HP Quality Center. So it's a very, very popular test management tool. These days it's also called a lifecycle management, and we'll see why in a couple of minutes. Initially, HP ALM was called Test Director, probably 10 years back or something. Then eventually it got the name Quality Center, and right now it's called HP ALM. So a lot of people have this question: how is HP ALM different from HP Quality Center? If you ask me, there are nothing like, there are no major changes. If you ask me, there are a couple of additions here and there, small ones, and the already existing features have been enhanced. But other than that, ALM and QC are the same, except that ALM is a later version. Okay. So I'm going to show you how ALM works. I'm just going to give you a demonstration, and you can ask me if you have any questions once we are through with the demonstration. Okay. First, let's just see what ALM is used for. So when we say test management, it actually supports all the QA activities, everything that a tester might be doing in his day-to-day activities. So first thing it does is it defines and maintains requirements and tests. You can create tests. So you can actually define a test, you can create a test, you can organize a test, you can also execute the tests through it, you can collect the results and analyze it. Again, there is the defect management part of it. And not only can you create defects, you can share the defects, track the progress, you can collect some metrics, and there are some asset libraries that you can share across projects. And then the best feature of ALM out of all is that it integrates very easily with the other functional testing tools, so that when you are actually having an automation project, you will be able to use ALM as your one stop, where you can not just you don't have to create tests somewhere and then come run them and come back and update the results. You don't have to do that. The created tests can stay inside QC, and you can directly run them. We'll come to see each one of them in detail. But one of the best features, according to me, of ALM is that it can be used for both manual and automation projects equally efficiently. So any kind of test project that you might have, ALM will very well fit your profile, and it also supports agile projects. Okay, let's take a look at its architecture. Architecture in this, it's a client-server application. So the server component is what powers the whole thing, and the client is how ALM is accessed by the users. So basically, you are going to access it with the help of a URL. Okay. And then there is a backend database where all the defects are stored. So as a tester, you will have this URL and a username and password to access it. Okay. On the HP side, there is a 30-day trial if you are interested to download. So you can give that a try if you want to use ALM on your own side. Again, there are two components to ALM. One is ALM or QC admin, and the other is the QC user. QC admin has, so in Jira we have seen that we can create a project by ourselves, and we can create the versions, we can create the domains and everything, correct? But in ALM there is a separate component for it. The admin component is what deals with user creation, project creation, domain creation, all kinds of email alerts, who should they go to, in what conditions they go to. All these are basically programmed by an admin. Also there are some accesses and authorization concerns that an admin takes care of. Again, as a day-to-day user, as a tester, we really do not have to worry about the QC admin activities. Again, they are all very easy. In case you will have to perform them in the future in a job, you will be able to do it very easily. But generally, QC admin is not done by test engineers. There is a separate, it is basically a separate activity that is assigned to one person, and they are the one who coordinate all the activities. Okay. The reason why I'm listing this out is there are so many job descriptions, where they ask for a QC admin specifically. So to just make sure that we understand the differentiation, I wanted to let you know that there are two different components. So QC user is what we are going to see now. When I say QC user, this is for everybody. Again, so let me start asking by a question. Who should have access to Quality Center? Team, who do you think should have access to Quality Center or ALM? Team leads and testers, yes. Yes, team leads and testers should have, and then QA managers, perfect. Roshan, developers, yes. Basically, everybody in the team should have, Rasika, you're right on. Everybody in the team should have access to QC. So the reason behind that is the business analyst might be interested in knowing the testing status. Since this actually ALM, we'll see in a minute how it is an end-to-end solution for all our testing needs. So we've talked about status reporting. All the testing activities should be transparent, because testing is one phase where the quality of a product is, it comes through. It will be very, very visible. So anybody who is concerned with the project should have access to ALM. Amir, about compliance, did you have a question? Okay. So how does ALM work? ALM has this flow basically. Initially, it was just requirements, test planning, test execution, and defects, right? So initially there was only these four. Recently they have added the release specifications too. Okay, so this is the way in which ALM lifecycle management flows, and we'll see how it happens. So when you are looking at this flow diagram, do you think there is any activity of the testing team that is not included here? So release information, yes, we do need that. Requirements, yes. Test planning, yes. Test execution, definitely. And defects, obviously. So is there any part of our tester's job that this flow is missing? The one thing that this flow does not show, and something that's a very integral activity of a tester's job, is basically the test reporting. So basic flow is this, but QC also has an extensive reporting feature, and we'll see how that works. Okay. All right. Let's just start the demonstration now. Okay. Let me first show you how to log into QC. So as I said, QC is accessible via an email. Okay. And then as soon as the username, login name, and the password are usually provided by your admin. Quality Center admin. So as soon as I put in my username and password and authenticate, it's going to give me a list of all the domains and projects that I have access to. Okay, then I'm going to select again which projects are you supposed to have access to. This is again determined by the admin, and they're going to provide that access. So once you know which project you want to log into, you first log in, and then as a general rule, QC will take you to the page that you have last accessed. Okay, when you look at the, so please note the left hand side of it. These are all the actions that you can perform. Okay, so there is a dashboard, which is the reporting feature. There is management, there is requirements, there is testing, and there is defects. Okay, so this is another important interview question. What are the four main tabs of HP Quality Center? It's basically requirements, test plan, test lab, and defects. Though they might be organized a little differently, it's all the same. Okay. So we'll deal with the dashboard part of it at the end, because that is an analysis aspect of it. But then we'll first see how releases and everything are coordinated. So when you look into the management part of the left hand side, you see that there are releases and libraries. When you see the requirements, there is a requirements and business model, the test case, and the defects. All right. So I'm not going to deal with libraries and business models, because libraries is nothing but a place where you can share if there is any information and you want to share it across projects. That's something you can put in the libraries. Since that is not directly related to our testing activity, I'm not going to cover that in detail. The same applies to business model. To create business models is nothing but you can upload some business flow diagrams and all, for which you will need another integrated tool. And since I don't have that, and again it's not directly related to the testing activities, so we're not going to deal with the business models also. The rest of them we'll see what each one does. Okay. Before that, let's look at a scenario. Okay. Say if these are your features to test. There is a login. So this is an online email application. So there is a login with correct credentials. There's a login with incorrect credentials, and you forgot your password, and there's a new user registration. Okay, so these are the 4 features. All right, and this is how your releases are going to go on. Say if your project has 2 releases, and September release, you are going to test feature 1 and feature 2. This is the start date and end date. That means so the one prerequisite that QC has is for every release it should have a start date and end date. Again, we talked about this. Every time we get a new build or new cycle, we are first going to perform a smoke test, then sanity test, then functional test. Again, I just broke down these 3 cycles depending on my ease of use. For you, you might not want to separate the smoke test, sanity test, and functional test. You might want to have cycle 1, cycle 2, cycle 3. Again, for the ease of understanding, I'm using this as an example. If you want to use another cycle name or something else that forms a particular cycle, that's completely up to you. All right. So now September release has 2 features. October release has 2 features. There's a start date, there's an end date, and a couple of cycles in each one of them. All right. So now let's see that I have this information. How am I going to put this into QC? That is the first thing that we are going to learn. Okay. Under management, go to the releases part of it. And the way QC is organized is, every time there is a parent node, in this case releases, and you can create your own subfolder. So now I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to name it Software Testing Health Training Course. Okay. So my folder gets created. Again, when you look at this, there is a way in which you can track the effort also. But again, I'm not going to include that right away. I'm not going to do any of the managerial functions now, like effort calculation and all. I'm not going to touch that. I'm only going to show you the software life cycle, software test life cycle basically. So I'm not going to fill those up for now. And then what we're going to do is, we're going to create a subfolder, because you have September release, and then October release. So at this point, do we have any information in it? Not really, because this is just a folder. So under each folder, I'm going to create new release. Okay. So for release, everything that is shown in red is basically mandatory information. Okay. So I'm going to name this as my September release. The start date, I'm just going to give it 1st September, and the end date, I'm going to give it 30th September. Okay. And then you can enter your description, anything that you'd like. And this is how you create a new release. Again, there are a lot of tabs that come up. Okay, I think at this point we won't be able to say what each tab means, but we'll come back. Okay. So this is how I create a release. All right, and according to here, according to this table that we have drawn, each release in turn has couple of cycles under it, right? So let's see how those cycles in cycle information is created. Again, choose the particular release and create new cycle. Okay, the cycle can be smoke test cycle. Again, there should be a start date and end date. So I'm going to choose it as 1st to 3rd. Okay, so this is how a cycle and a release are created. There is only one restriction. The cycle start date and end date should fall within the dates that you have given for a release. Other than that, there are no restrictions. We can create all of them, but I'm just going to show you creating just one each. All right. But if you need me to repeat any steps, please let me know, and I will do that. Okay. So for now, we've just created a cycle and a release. Okay. So next, let's come to creating requirements. So I come to the requirements tab. And I'm going to create a new folder. So I'm going to choose it again, STH training course. Always make sure that you maintain a consistent naming naming convention. Again, under the requirements, under this folder I'm going to add new requirements. So what is the new requirement here? These are my test requirements, correct? So for this release, I've got two requirements. So the first requirement is login with correct credentials. This is nothing but, since this is a agile project, you have the backlog priority and must have, could have, should have values. User story number, I'm just going to put some number here. All the red ones are mandatory. The others are not. Estimated effort, I'm just going to put a number because already it's mandatory, but I'm not sure what is the valid number there, so I'm just going to put a random number. Now, the fields that we have to note here is the release and the cycle. So, for each requirement that you create, you will be able to assign it to the release that it should belong to. Okay, so this is the September release. And then for the target cycle, we are again going to choose the cycle that we have created. So if there are more than one cycles, you can assign more than one cycles, you can assign more than one releases. Again, if you notice, the target release and target cycle field, they are non-mandatory. That means QC will not impose that you have to have traceability. It is a desirable feature, and should you wish to incorporate that traceability into your project, you have a way to do that through these fields. But QC by itself will not say that you cannot log a requirement without actually assigning the release or target cycle. Okay. Again, with everything there is a mechanism to include attachments, or you can see it provides this wonderful editor. If you would like to include elaborate documents with pictures and everything, you can do that. And these are a couple of details that you can create. Okay. So now I have created this requirement. Okay, here is my requirement. Again, there is something called a direct cover status. So the direct cover status is going to show not covered because there are no test cases assigned to this requirement, right? So you can now see how QC at a glance will show you whether a requirement has been covered or not. So traceability is an inbuilt aspect of QC. Anywhere, anything that you add, you can always backtrack back and see if that relationship has been established. So now let's do one thing. Let's go back to the cycle that we have created. And then there is this refresh button. If the changes don't happen immediately, you just have to hit the refresh button. And you see here, it is showing that there is one requirement assigned to this cycle. Because we just created one and we assigned it to smoke test cycle, right? So it will show you that assignment. The same thing applies to release 2. So it already shows that there is one requirement assigned to it. And if you need to see it, you just have to click on it. I'm just going to continue. Okay. Do you have any questions so far, team, until the creation of the requirements? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no, and then we'll move on to test plan. So tell me this. In your normal testing process, what is the next step after you have your requirements all done? What do you do next? Any thoughts? Okay. So after you have requirements, what are you going to do? You're going to write test cases, right? So all your test cases, they go in the test plan field. Okay. So again, I'm going to say software testing help training course. Very important. Try to make sure that you have a consistent naming convention throughout your QC. Again, this is not a restriction imposed by QC, but for the sake of readability and easy accessibility and to have a standard throughout the team, this is recommended. Again, I have my folder now. So this is my release details. Again, these are the test conditions that I need to check. Okay, the login with correct credentials, and this is what I'm trying to do. So these two are basically my September release, test scenarios, right? So for one requirement, I have 3 test cases, right? 2 test cases. And here for one requirement, I have 3 test cases. So let's see how a manual test case will look like. So they say this is my test case. Okay, now I have to write a test case here. So what I'm going to do is new test. So I'm going to name it as login with correct credentials. Okay. Again, here there is a type field. So here it will show you all the kind of test scenarios it could be. So this is where, so if you need to select it as, a load runner scenario or any other scenario, depending if at all if it's not a manual test case. But for us it's manual test case. I'm just going to keep it that way. I'm just since the other details are non-mandatory, I'm just going to say okay. And here, after its creation, you see how many tabs are here. I'm just going to go to the next tab, which is nothing but the design steps. Here I will have an option to add my test steps. Okay, so the step 1 is nothing but is this. Launch gmail.com URL in the XYZ browser. What is the expected result? Gmail.com homepage should open up. Correct? Then I say OK. Then let me add another step. Enter username. Probably Swati Sila. Let me just. So basically, I'm just going to put in two steps, but if you need more, you can always do that. So this is how all the steps are. You can add as many steps as you like. Okay. Now let me ask you a question. We have seen Jira, we have seen Bugzilla. Do any of those tools provide a mechanism for you to write a test case? Team? No, that's because those tools are basically issue tracking and bug tracking tools. Out of the tools that we've seen so far, ALM is the only tool that supports a testing activity completely. Okay, and then there is the parameters tab. Using this, you can pass in the test data. If you don't want to add it to the test step directly, you can use the parameter value. And again, there is a mechanism for you to include attachments. And now, how are you going to backtrack it back to the requirements? Here, you will be able to link this test case to a requirement. By parameter, we can add test from database. From the database, I'm not so sure. This is actually a new feature, but if you are choosing a parameter, no, actually no, not from a database or a table, but you can put in all your test data in the test resources field and just put in the parameters. It will pick it up. So you have to create a parameter here and link that parameter here. Okay, in the parameters tab, you will have to link that parameter. And whatever value you provide in the test resources, it will come up here. The only the advantage of using a parameter instead of writing it here is that you don't have to. You can use this test case for multiple values. That's all. So test resources is where you create it. No, external database support and the external Excel sheet supports. No, that doesn't happen. Okay. Now we were going to add a requirement to this. Okay. So where did our folder go? Okay, so there is our requirement that we've created. So here I have added this requirement. In other words, I have just linked this requirement to our test case. Okay, now let's see. Here again, it shows it as not covered. So as long as the test case that you have linked it to does not get run and it does not have a status of its own, see, it's going to show it as no run. Okay. See, earlier it was saying not covered. Now it says no run. In case it got run and if there is a status like pass or fail or blocked or whatever, the relevant status is shown here. So once you look at the requirements, you will be able to tell what is happening for the test cases that are assigned to it. Again, there can be multiple test cases that can get assigned to just one requirement. So now that you assign the test case back to the requirement, and the requirement is already assigned with the or linked to the release and cycle, there is that level of traceability that just keeps going like one step behind. Okay. So yes, that is a very good question, Samir. Requirement ID is customized or predefined. Yeah, as soon as you create a new anything, a new test case, a new test, you know, a requirement, a new cycle, everything gets assigned an ID, and that is auto-generated. Okay, it's not something that we can choose. QC auto-generates it for us. Now, what is a test lab? Test lab is nothing but it is a place where you can create test sets and start executing your tests. So let's see what that means. Again, naming convention, important. So when I create a new test set, so this is a sample test set, right? Okay. Before we move on any further, let me explain this concept to you a little bit. The concept of the test steps. Say you have a project X, right? And this project has 100 test cases. Okay, and then you are executing cycle 1, cycle 2, cycle 3. Right? So in cycle 1 you are executing 100 test cases. In cycle 2 you are executing the same 100, and cycle 3 also you are executing the same 100. Right? If you are doing, if it is a manual testing that you are performing, what are you going to do? Are you going to write test cases each time you will execute it? No, because already the test cases are documented or available for you to use. Except only thing you will do is you will take a new sheet where the expected result and actual result are not there. Correct? So with each cycle, all you're going to do is use the same test cases and just have a mechanism where you can record its results and assign a different status if at all that exists. Right? Same logic applies to the test set also. So each instance where you are adding the required test cases for you to execute, that's called a test set. Okay. So now I'm going to create a new test set. I created a new test set in the execution grid. So if you notice carefully, in the test plan where we have created a test case, there is no mechanism for you to record the actual result. All you can do is create a test case and keep it there. Now when you want to execute the test case, you will have to create a test set and you will have to select the tests that you want to include in the in your test set. Okay, in the present execution, what are the test cases that you want to run? Again you can add this test more than once depending on your requirement. It will ask you, do you want to create a duplicate instance? You can say yes, and it's going to create it one more time. You can also add test cases from a different a different folder. Any folder that you have access to, you will be able to add test cases to it. So this is how I just created my test suite. Now, when you go to the execution tab, it is going to show you how they're going to get executed. Sometimes you can create relationships so that 1 gets executed, 2 gets executed, and then again, so this 1 and 2 are nothing but 2 test cases, instance 1 and instance 2. So if you want the instance 1 to get executed first, and then run you can change the order in which the execution happens here basically. So now it will basically run number 2 first, then the first instance first, and it will come to the number 1. Okay, so the execution flow is basically where you can define the order in which the test cases in your test set should get executed. So this tab is basically for automation errors. and then attachments, and then linked defects. We will come to the linked defects in a minute. So now this is the execution grid, okay, and I have saved it. Now when I want to run the test case, all I need to do is say run. So this is the manual run instance that opens up. When I say begin run, it's going to display each step in a test case to me, and I have to execute this manually, and depending on the status I can say passed or I can say failed. Alright, now I'm going to say it failed. Okay, so now the status shows failed and I can log a new defect against it. So let's fix complexity. Let me know if there is any field that you don't understand. We can go over it, but otherwise I'm just going to fill out all the mandatory fields. Okay, here you can, there are some pointers here which you can fill. The steps to recreate, the test step number, expected versus actual result. You can just write anything that you wish to and say okay, and the defect gets auto created. Okay, now I will stop the execution of this test case. So even if one step fails, the test fails, okay, and a couple of other test cases can pass. That is up to you. Now let's see the linked defect section. So here it will show you the defect that you created. Again, let's track it backward. Now the test back to the requirements. Again, refresh the status. You will see that the requirement has failed. Okay, if you just open it up, this requirement, and if you want to see what are the defects associated with it, just 1 second. Ideally, it should show the defect that got created. So here, if you see, there is just one test case that is assigned to it, but the one that has failed. So it is going to show you how much is the coverage and how it's happening. Ideally, it should show you the defect also because it's linked to that. Okay, let's try that again. Let's create another defect. So yeah, you've seen that anytime there is a failure, you can auto create a defect right from there. Other than that, you can actually create a defect by going into the defects tab, and you can always choose to create a new defect. Okay, I'm just going to choose some values. I'm going to submit it. So this is my new defect that got created. Okay, let's just check one more thing before we do this. This is the defect that got created in the previous step. Okay, let's see if there are any linked entities to this. So if this defect is linked to any other defect, you can add that link here. Okay, so 102, that's the new link defect that we have created. So this defect, you can say that it is linked to the other defect. Okay, so any questions, team? So far that whatever you've seen. Another feature before we take questions is there is a email functionality inbuilt, and there are certain conditions on which an auto email should be sent to a couple of users. For example, if I created a new defect and I assigned it to somebody, as soon as they create that defect, an email should be sent with the details of the bug. But those are the auto emails. But if you want to explicitly send an email about anything, you can do that too. Where so, Samir, what is the question? How it displays fail with which process or condition executed? What do you mean by that? So say I'm saying it failed because say I opened say okay, here my test step says launch Gmail URL in the XYZ browser. So there are two things that can happen when I execute this step, right? Either the Gmail homepage might open or it does not. So for the sake of testing, I'm just assuming that the page does not open up, and that's why I failed it. Not that the test case really fails. So in the real time, it could be one of these two states, right? Either it could pass or either it could fail. Anything else, team? Anything that you would like to see? I'm going to show you the dashboard in a minute. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, we can take that. So these are all the different fields. So in case you want to add what is in scope for a release, you can add those details. You can use this tool to make your testing process as comprehensive as you'd like. Okay. So if there are no questions, let me show you the dashboard view of it. Rasika has a question. Can we import from Excel also? Yes, that's a very good question. Actually, you can import test cases, requirements, and defects. Usually, you can write them in the Excel sheet, and you can import them to into QC. Actually, that is the general best recommended recommended procedure, because most of the times when you are performing your test documentation, there might be a couple of reviews and lots of changes. And as you can see, QC is something that resides on a server. So instead of using network to go back and forth and make changes, it is a good practice to actually do them on your local machine using Excel or Word. Word also, it also supports import from Word. So use that as the first step. And then once you are satisfied, all the reviews are done, then you can upload it. And another thing is normally typical users like the test engineers and all, they will not have delete permissions on QC, because you don't want them to accidentally or intentionally also sometimes delete any of the factors that have already been created in QC. So in that case, once you write something incorrect, deleting it would be a big problem. How to import, Rasika, that is actually an advanced topic. Basically, what happens is there will be a add-in. There is an Excel add-in for QC. You will have to download that. Once you download that, there will be an additional option within your Excel sheet itself. So after you create your Excel sheet, you will have to use that option. And then what it does is, see, there are these. Let me give you an idea, but it is actually a little beyond the scope of this session to show you the import. So I'm just going to give you an idea, okay? So say this is column A. Amir, if you want detailed instructions, we have a complete tutorial on our site. Let me show it to you. It is a 7-document series, so it has all the steps and a very detailed understanding of HPALM. That is the URL, team. If at all you are interested in learning more advanced or step-by-step instructions. Okay, so now let's come back to the Excel import. So this is the defect ID, defect status, say severity, and priority. Say these are the some of the steps that you've created. Again, assuming there are some values in the corresponding fields. So what you have to do is you will have to first make sure that your Excel document is complete, and then map the call. So here now in QC, the defect ID column is nothing but column A in the Excel sheet, right? And the defect status is nothing but column B. The linked entity or the severity or whatever, it might be C and D. So you will have to link these columns, create a map, and then there is this add-in, export to Excel. As soon as you finish that linking, once you click on it, all the details get added into HPLM. So yeah, that's how there is an add-in. It needs an exclusive add-in also for Excel and QC also for QTP and load runner integration with HPLM. You need a specialized add-in. Okay. Again, analysis and dashboard. So dashboard view, as you've seen, is nothing but a view where it shows you the status. So you can create a new page, text, import Word is new feature for ALM and QC. We can import only Excel. Import Word and Excel, both. You can do both. I am not very sure which one is new, but since I have always worked in projects where we used an Excel sheet for all kinds of documentation, so that's what I've done most of the times. Frankly, I've never uploaded a Word document into QC. I'm not sure how that works, but I do know that there is a Word add-in also. Okay. So here when I create a test, what I can do is I can add the different kind of reports that I want to include. All the kinds of reports that I want to include in my dashboard page are here. So if I need a defect report, all of them are here. All kinds of defect reports that I can view and add are all here for the requirements, for the test run, for the test plan. So these are all the reports, graphical and both tabular. So you can choose any one of them and add it to your dashboard view. So let's do one. So I'm going to add a closed total active defects graph, and I'm going to view it. So this is how all the status will be shown. Probably here there is nothing right now to show, but if there was valid data, this is how all the graphs would be displayed for me. Okay. Any other questions, team? All right. Now let's try to analyze what are the features. Now, do you see any shortcomings, or do you see that this tool might not work in a certain scenario? Is there anything that comes to your mind? Team? Okay, then I'm assuming there are no questions. So yeah, right away, if at all you have any questions later on, that's fine too. So if there are no questions, there are a couple of questions sent in by by the rest of our team members. We'll take those, and this would be, we can just say that we're done with QC. I mean, pretty much that's all there is to learn with ALM. Only the best feature according to me in ALM is that it provides with this comprehensive, place where you can write your test cases, and you don't have to rewrite your test cases for a later cycle. All you have to do is just pull them out and execute them as many times as you like. So that's one of the best features, I think. Another feature that I think is not there in any of the other tools is the traceability. Anywhere you create any entity, it can be always linked back to, to every stage. So I think that is another fantastic thing. Again, the defect management, it's the same basically. We talked about it yesterday. It's like how you learn to drive a car once, and depending on the make and everything, you might take a couple of minutes to familiarize with it, but it's all the same. So here also, there are all these, statuses that a defect can take. See, it is new to open, rejected, reopen, retest, delivered, descoped. So you see, it does support all the defect management activities too. So it's in the defect management category. There's nothing unique about this except that there is that traceability. Okay, there is that other module, that user management, the QC admin module, which is a little more complex. And also, even if it is not complex functionally, it is complex in the terms that it deals with the security and access permissions, and who should be allowed to delete, who should not be allowed to delete, and when the email should go to. So basically, it is a little sensitive part of the ALM component. But other than that, ALM is a pretty simple tool, most widely used in my opinion. Amir, again, the integration of ALM with an automation testing tool, we are not going to see that, but yes, we are going to see QTP and how we can create QTP test cases. But other than that, the QTP and ALM integration is not going to be, it's not in the scope of the lesson next week. But we will see a QTP also. Anything else, team? All right then. So if there are no questions, I'll just, I have a couple of questions sent in to me by Samir and Rasika. Let's just take Samir's question first. His question is, this is the defect management life cycle. His question is, how can a defect go back to being open after it is, how can it go back to being reopened after it is closed? Is that your question, Samir? Yes. Does anybody want to try answering that? All right. Let me come back to it. Say it is the first day of your testing, Samir. You encountered an issue that you are not able to send out an email. Okay. So you raised the bug. It was resolved and it got closed. And a new build is put in. Okay, and then so build 1 had the issue that the emails were not going out. Build 2, it got fixed. In build 3, there were a couple more changes and the build got deployed one more time. And in build 3 also, you are not able to send out the defects. So in that case, instead of, in some projects, what you can do is you can raise that as an open defect depending on the defect management process they have in place. But in other projects, they don't want to increase the volume of the defect, so they are just going to go ahead and reopen the already closed defect. That is when this state can come up. Does that answer your question? Samir, if we add new feature, then it gets, no, it is not about adding new feature. Anytime you found a bug and it got resolved and it reappears, for whatever reason it might be, then you reopen the already closed bug. Okay? Okay. Rasika had a question. What are the problems? Okay, I'm sorry, you're not done. So then it was closed wrong at first. No, see, let me try to come back to this and try to explain you. See, this is the build 1, okay? You found a bug. In build 2, this bug got fixed, okay? In build 3, you got the bug again. So here it was opened. In this case, it got closed after retesting. Once you got the build 3, for whatever reason, you're still seeing the bug that you saw in the build 1. So you're just going to, instead of creating a new bug one more time, to mention the same issue, you are going to reopen the already closed bug. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay then. Rasika has a question. What are the challenges or problems that testers face through the software development lifecycle? Any thoughts on this question? What do you think are the challenges that testers face? Alright, this is also a very common interview question, Rasika. One of the first and foremost challenges that at least I have faced as a tester is not having documentation. Yes, perfect, Sandeep. You do not have enough documentation most of the times to base your test cases on. So that's first and foremost. And the next challenge that you might face is environment issues. Environment forms a major, it's like a black box because we as testers don't have the technical expertise to figure out what's wrong with the environment. First is the technical expertise, and the next is we also don't have accesses to, sometimes it might be just that the server is down, but in most cases you won't have the rights to go ahead and restart it. All it takes is to reboot, but you will not have that access. So environment is, again, unstable, incorrect environment is your biggest challenge. That comes next. And the third is attitudes between teams. Most of the times, testers are considered to be a bottleneck because we come at the last minute and we somehow end up complaining all the time that we don't have enough time, because when there are delays due to XYZ reasons, it is up to the testers to absorb those delays. And also, you don't get an excuse that since you don't get enough time, so it's okay if 1 or 2 bugs go out. That's not an excuse. So most of the time, testing team is considered to be the people who will say, hey, it cannot go live, it cannot go live. So most of the time, it is generally viewed that we are a bottleneck. So that kind of this is especially true when the testing team is very small. When the testing team is huge, you can always say that, hey, 10 people say that it cannot go. But if the testing team consists of 1 or 2 people, and if you are the one who is saying that no, it cannot go live, it will be like a personal reflection that you don't want the project to go out. So attitudes are another major concern. At least that's what I have felt most of the times, because you are the person who always say bad things. I mean, negative things, obviously. So if you are asked this question in the interview on how did you resolve it, not enough documentation is a problem you can resolve by talking to the concerned teams. Most of the time they might not write their experiences down into a document and give it to you. No, they are not going to do that because obviously everybody is busy. But they will definitely give you an overview of what really happened. Okay. So not enough documentation, you can obviously overcome that by talking to the people and getting a good knowledge transfer from them. And the environment issues, most of the times with the environment issues, you just have to deal with them. Because if it is a technical expertise gap, sometimes you might want to fill it, sometimes you just want to learn how to do it, but most of the times you might not get access to it. So with respect to the environment, you just have to live with it. And attitudes, with respect to attitudes, what I found most useful is, don't just say it cannot go live or it can go live or whatever. Base your opinions on facts. Always have information, reports, whatever it is that you need to make sure that you back your decision up right. And also, don't take it too personally. Sometimes when somebody says, hey, this project has to go live in any case, in that case, as a tester, provide your statistics on why you think it cannot go and leave the decision. So don't get too personal and don't argue about it. So that I found to be most helpful, at least in my career. All I most of the times do is I let them know what is the problem. I let them know how much time I need. Apart from that, I just let it go. Okay. So these are some of the ways you can deal with it. Our team members have some excellent insight actually. Amir faces the exact same attitude issues in the team. That is so true. And Samir has a question. What's the ratio of testers to developers in a standard company? There is no standard ratio, Amir, but the testers team is generally smaller than the development team. And again, the testing team is not always a constant size. When the test planning phase is going on, there is just usually one QA representative, generally the manager. Okay? So at that point of time, the testing team just consists of one person. And when the test documentation is happening, probably 2 or 3 people come on board, and then you will, again, depends on the magnitude of the project. When the test documentation is happening, a couple more people come on board, and you write your test cases. After the test documentation, when the test execution phase is happening, that is when the QA team is at its full strength in terms of people. So when the test execution is happening, there are a lot more testers than normal. Again, as soon as the test execution is done and there is only a maintenance, like a standard, a minimum number of testers to be there in the team, again there will be like very few. So the testers' strength in terms of manpower is not always constant. So that is the question. That is one question. So did you get your answer, Rasika, or do you have any further questions on this? Okay, I'll just move on to the next question, but if you do have a question, we'll take it. Okay. Another question was about IBM's defect tracking system. As far as I know, every company has their own inbuilt internal defect systems. We've seen Bugzilla, Jira, and QC so far. That doesn't mean they are the only bug tracking systems. There might be many more. So anytime you get asked a question about did you use a specific bug tracking system, and even if you have never heard what that tool really does or the name of the tool so far, you can definitely say that you can work on it, because we've seen it. There are only a couple of activities that include defect management, and every tool, if it really is trying to make this process easy, will and should have it. So if your question is, does IBM have a specified defect tracking tool, I'm not aware of it, and even if it is, I can say with confidence that you will be able to use it. Okay. IBM has it. Yes, some companies have their own defect tracking tools. Yes, they do have that. They do have their internal tools. It doesn't mean they have to use a tool from the market. No, they might. So yeah, that is the next question. Another question is, how do you perform regression testing using QTP? So in my opinion, regression testing and testing are not very different. So if you can perform a test as part of your normal testing using QTP, you can perform the same test as part of your regression testing. Okay, we will actually see how a test can be written in QTP and how you can run it. So I will take this question at that time. Okay. And another question you've asked is, what is the difference between ALM and QC? ALM is nothing but a later version of QC. Okay. Quality Center, the name itself says that it is a testing intensive product. Nowadays they've added a couple more project management aspects to it, so the later versions are called ALM. That's all. Okay. And another question is, what is UFT? UFT is nothing but Unified Functional Training. Yeah, Unified Functional Training. I guess it's what the new product, the functional testing product of HP is called. It is nothing but QTP plus HP Service Test. QTP, you all know, is a functional testing tool. HP Service Test is nothing but a web services testing tool. So the integration of both of them is called a UFT. I think they ask in the interview, what is the new feature? If you actually, there is no special new feature in ALM that is not there in QC. Only that the existing features have been enhanced. Okay. Again, it depends from version to version. If you ask me what is the difference between version 1 and 11, there are many. But if you ask me what is the difference between 11.0 and 11.5, not significant. Only some of the features have changed, that's all. So is that all? Did I get all your questions? Anything else, team? Any other questions? So again, how easy do you think is QC when compared to the other tools that we've seen? Do you find this easier, or do you find this a little more complicated? Samir, what do you think? In my opinion, it's actually pretty easy, yes, but then it has a little more number of features basically. So if you want to leverage them all, it just takes a little getting used to again. But nothing that a normal tester cannot achieve. It just takes a couple more days of practice. Next time when you put in a QC as your experience in your resume, or if you're trying to, always include the QC user as your skill set, not the QC admin. Okay, just make sure you include that differentiation. And then, as I said, there are detailed tutorials on our website. If you have any questions, let me know. I can answer them for you because I wrote those tutorials, so I can help you with that. If there's nothing else, that's all I got, team. Next week we'll see tools. Probably QTP, Selenium, and LoadRunner is what I have in mind. You will all get a new invite for the next week's sessions. Apart from the next week's sessions invite, you're also going to get a questionnaire. And I request each one of you to answer those questions and send them to me. All those questions are based on are basically to help me estimate what level of resume and interview and job search help that you require from us. So there will be questions related to your experiences and to what level, to what extent, because I understand that each one of you are at different phases of your careers and each one might need a separate approach to helping them get into this career. So I'm going to send out a questionnaire, and please provide your feedback on that. And next week, the first 3 days we'll see 3 tools, and the last 2 days we'll work on the resumes. So that's the plan, team. If there's nothing else, we'll sign off for today. Have a nice weekend, all of you. Thank you so much. Samir, I did get your email on Jira, but you know what? Unfortunately, I will not be able to create any users again. There are some licensing issues. So yeah, I'm sorry about that. I will not be able to give you any user ID. Okay. All right, team. See you next week. Okay. Rasika, I did get your resume. We'll talk about that next week, unless it's an urgent issue for you right now.